Hey guys, Evan's coming at you, and really excited to share this video today, just to talk about, things that every person should know, or things that actually fitness business owners like myself and people who are studios, boutique fitness business would like for personal trainers to know upon, even joining their team or working here. So this is kind of like, I interviewed some of the top fitness business people in the community. And when I say that, most of them are earning 50,000 plus per month in top line revenue. They've been in the business 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 years. And so some of this information is data I correlated from them, as well as information that I've experienced being in the business. This is our 15th year in business. So we've built it literally from my living room with one client here and driving all over the place to a business that does $1 million plus. So I'm only going to teach you things we know that absolutely work. And then if there are caveats that's specific to my fitness business, Seeing You Fit, then I'll definitely put asterisk on that and let you know it. But then if it's just general stuff, then I think you should know it. So some of the things that I got in my feedback were sometimes it seems that it still is not being communicated effectively that you're a professional, so as a personal trainer, if you're new to for personal training, if you've done it for a while, you go to a family event and you're like, hey, what do you do? You're like, I'm a personal trainer. You're like, oh, okay, cool, what else do you do? As if what we do isn't a profession. So whether you're 4-year degree, with most of my staff are, or you got your certs and you've been training for a while, it's a viable profession. But a lot of times people don't look at the personal training industry as a profession in and of itself. Many times they look at it as like a hobby or a gig, and a lot of that has to do with how do we present ourselves as a fitness professional. So when we say like look at it as a professional, is are you doing continued education to grow your skill sets? Or are you just doing the minimal things to renew your certification? How are you growing yourself as a person, as a professional? Are you reading personal growth and development books? These are things that we wish that people would come to the table doing, or definitely quickly willing to do, because we know the better they are as a human being, the better they are serving our target market. So treating like a professional. Do you look like a professional, or you just look like some guy who lifts weights? So even down to how you present yourself. Now, when it comes to presentation and professionalism, that looks different in every gym. So in our studio, we look like maybe like physical therapists. We wear collar shirts, we wear golf pants, so we want, because we serve an older demographic, for them to clearly look at us as that health professional that they're used to seeing in the marketplace. But in another gym, it may be some sweats and a t-shirt. But no gym I know of, it's wrinkled clothes, or any of those kind of things. Am I keep myself clean cut, whatever your version of that is? Am I smiling a lot? Because that's really important, for our clientele. Am I upbeat? So it doesn't matter how much you know in the fitness space. If you can't keep people engaged and keep people on your shift, you don't add a lot of value. So that's one thing. And as a professional, you don't fraternize or date your clients. So there's a great book called Boundaries. And the thought process is, as professionals, the conversation should be probably, I'd say, if this was my whole training session, that much time is about them and that little bit of time is about me. So I'm spending most of the time talking about the client and inserting only when relevant and really when asked, or to bridge the rest of the conversation with something about me. But it's not uncommon that someone will train with me for a long time before they realize that I have kids, or this is my background, or I'm married, or some of these kind of things. You can see I'm married with a ring, but some of the other pieces they may not be able to connect because it's not relevant to their journey and what they're going through. So we don't fraternize with our clients, and we definitely don't date our clients. That's a great way to kill the fitness business. And professionals also don't solicit their client for products that the studio doesn't sell. So why do we do that? Right now, there's a lot of different businesses out there in the marketplace, and my eraser clearly is not erasing the best, but there's a lot of different businesses in the marketplace. And we have to remember, let's say this is the fitness business here. Put a little rooftop on top of it to cover it. There's massive numbers of expenses that are coming into that studio. Right. So one, there's the easy ones, right? There's a lease that has to be paid. There's insurance that has to be covered. There's with the lease, you have common area maintenance and all these kind of things. You have insurance that you have to cover, right? You have to cover payroll. You have to cover all the cleaning items, everything that comes into the facility. As the fitness business owner, you have to pay for it. To get clients, you have to do marketing. To come in there. When the lights go out, you have to cover that. So we have repairs and maintenance. The equipment, it doesn't magically show up, so you have to pay for equipment to come in. Typically, right now, to open up a viable studio that's maybe between 1,500 to 3,000 square feet, just to get it going, you're probably gonna have to invest somewhere around, I'd say, $200,000 to, I think on the low end, maybe 175, to anywhere from 350, and I know some that are even more depending on the market. So that's just the expense. And on top of that, we have workman's compensation and all those things. And then if you have employees, you have to do the other half of their taxes. So everything that the studio offers to bring in revenue to pay for these expenses then should be supported and ambassadored by the people that are there, because literally that revenue is creating their payroll. So if I have a staff member that's selling their own version of whatever, like we sell multivitamins in a specific brand in our studio, if they're offering a different brand to our clients on the DL or recommending different things, then they're hurting the amount of revenue that comes in, which by default is going to have to take an impact somewhere along the place. So the professional, we just market the things that are already provided by it. Some of the things is things like things that owners would like you to know is that they expect that you're going to grow. There's an expectation that you're going to work on your craft. There's a time in front of the clients that are important, but then also there's time to prepare for it. No different than anybody else. I have physicians that are good friends of mine, and you know what? They get paid for the surgery, but they have to look through the notes and everything before the surgery. And in order to collect the money, they have to go in after the surgery and record and do all their notes and everything they need to bill insurance. That's the same way fitness works. Unlike Chick-fil-A, where we walk in and we just like turn on something and just dunk it and there's nothing to do after. In the fitness business, there's going to be some time away from the clients that you have to invest to ensure that you can serve the client. And no matter how well it's systematized, there's still that little bit of before and a little bit of after that needs to be getting done. If you're talking about a small studio, not a big box gym, cleaning, is going to be a part of what you do, because you're serving the people. You can't be like, well, it's dirty because the cleaners haven't come. We all clean. That's the difference between small business and big business, in there. This is specific to CNU Feds. We have a zero profanity policy. I just don't think when I drop an F-bomb on a client, that's going to encourage them to feel better about themselves with the market of people that we serve. So we can always go, well, it's easy to say, well, someone is offended with profanity and someone isn't offended with profanity. And instead of asking those clients that on the front end, what we do is, if we don't do it, no one can be offended. Similarly, we don't get into conversations about politics and some of those kind of things. We can create enough friction just with the sports teams, and people expect a little bit of that in there. So we just stay away from profanity. And for people that don't know what it is, if grandma said it in church or a 2-year-old said it in church and everybody was like, then you probably shouldn't say it, kind of thing. The other thing is really, really important is that your social media matters. Now, this is going to touch on some toes here, but I think this is the way the personal training industry looks. At the bottom, there's like a ton of personal trainers, going for more and more certifications or more schooling and things like that. But then at the top here, and I say the top, it's kind of crazy. The top is a gym that's probably doing $30,000 or more is the top. And then we can kind of dial in tighter to the really, really high percentages. But when you start looking at 30,000 K or more, you're running a viable fitness business. And if you look at these guys' profiles on social media, and you look at these guys' profiles on social media, it's totally different. And so one thing I think, a lot of the gym owners, and this is something that I know for me is really important, like, does your social media speak to your target client, or does your social media only speak to yourself? And too often what we see is that your social media is a promotion of you. This is my bicep from this angle. This is my bicep from that angle. Did you see my bicep from that angle? You know what I mean? And so it makes you look like you're the hero. And down here, people think that likes equal influence, which equals dollars. But when you start getting into the rooms that these people are on, they all will tell you that these are not the same. So we have to determine, do I want to be an influencer or do I want to impact people that are in my local community? And if I want to impact a 45-year-old woman who's perimenopausal, who wants to lose 30 to 40 pounds, has some low back issues, some knee issues, experiencing self-confidence, she has sex with the lights off, she doesn't like taking pictures because she doesn't like the way she looks in pictures. She has a high stress job already, and she's looking for a solution. Are the images that I'm putting out attracting that person to me or repelling them from me? So your social media matters. How you handle yourself tells people about you. So it's really, really important, in there. Other things is, this one says, I wish trainers knew the operation side, meaning how much overhead the training gym has to run and how hard it is to acquire a client. You know, so, looking at the cost to even run a client, understand that this business is pumping thousands and thousands of dollars to go bring that one client in. So how we handle that client is critical. Now, a lot of times people come into the fitness business and they go, I want to make 60, 70, 80, I want to make 100 grand a year. Well, you have to understand, like, how much are your clients paying and how much of the dollar actually goes into payroll. So in most gyms that are operating successfully, meaning that there's probably about a 20% profit to the owner in there, which is a reasonable expense. If they had to do this, $300,000 risk plus, a 5-year guarantee plus payroll plus all the other headaches that happen with it, 20% is not a bad ask, right? Well, in that scenario, they're probably paying out about 35% of the top line revenue, somewhere in that space, in payroll. So we started looking at that in there. You're like, oh, okay. If 35% is, so we only generate, $100,000, that means we're only paying out 35,000 in total payroll. And payroll includes the portion, the gross, plus the other half of taxes that you have to pay. That's all tied into that payroll expense for the business. And that's a healthy business. When the number starts swinging higher than 35%, it chokes the business' ability to invest in marketing, invest in professional development, invest in all these other things that are there, pay all the bills that are up. So that's typically the sweet spot. If it gets a little lower, that can happen as the businesses are bigger or the staff is just lower. So at certain points, it's not like a linear scale with that, but understanding it costs a lot to run a business in there. Another question of the fiscal end, understanding it from soup to nuts. I'm not going to go through all that in there, but then looking at this is a career, not a hobby. And I kind of talked about that in there. And what's the difference, right? In a hobby, I'm in the mood to do it. I'm not in the mood to do it. But we have story upon stories of staff members who came in and they weren't making really hardly anything, or they were interns, and now they're buying a house and they're debt free, or they're buying things. I think a huge thing that I wish people know coming in is that the opportunity to be connected to a small business, especially the fitness business space, gives you an opportunity to learn things that transition into life. So what does that mean is, the skills that we learn in the fitness business space is different than, let's say, a small business who's a roofer. The owner may be working on marketing things, but the people who are laying the roof never have that same social interaction. But because we're working with people consistently every single day and we're crossing paths, you have this opportunity to learn, like, oh, they're working on professional development. If I work on professional development, I'll grow too. They'll work on personal development, reading books, I can grow too. They learn how to get out of debt. You develop like this friendship with boundaries relationship, and then you can learn those skills and get out of debt. So we have staff members who've gotten out of debt. We have staff members that have paid off over $30,000 worth of debt by applying the principles that I learned as the owner and then passed on to the team. Where there's community involvement for those who really want to create impact in the community, there's an opportunity in there. I think even with the career component is understanding that you have the ability, if you truly desire, to almost write your own check. And what I mean by that is that you can come into the fitness business, and as you first is going to learn all the pieces in there, then you can start finding what are the other ways I can add value to the business. And as you add value, you collect more pay. Versus I just come in and I want more pay because, I don't know, I went to school a lot. Typically in our industry, your ability to earn and the amount of school you receive are not linked at all. I know people that make strong six-figure income, like take home, as fitness business owners, and they don't even have an undergrad in kinesiology. And then I know people with their masters and doctorate, and they don't make 35,000 a year. So the two are not necessarily linked. One is building a business, and one is I went to school. As tough as that is, but you can create that community impact. You can do some cool stuff if that's what you want. You want to talk about a job with a purpose? You can create a lot of purpose if you get in there. Two last things I'll share is that no one cares about what you know. They only care about how you can help them and solve their problems and issues. So that's really important. A lot of times clients will be friendly, but they aren't your friends. So that's a huge component to realize. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And really they're there to solve their problem. They're investing the money that they're investing on a month-to-month basis to help get help with their issues and their problems, not necessarily to be your friend. And if someone's new, once they've been in it for a while, they'll see the people who love them at times will leave them for somewhere else that will solve the problem better. In there. So that's something that's really, really important to understand, that the clients need that set of boundaries in there. But it's a fun occupation. It's definitely something you could do. And the last thing I wanted to wrap up this conversation with is it takes longer to get good than you think. It's almost like being in elementary school, learning how to write or communicate English in the first grade. They're like, "Oh, you can read really well," before first grader. So just give yourself patience. We're in this Instagram, YouTube, get rich yesterday, world, but it doesn't happen like that. You'll hit your wall, you'll fail as a coach, and then that will be your opportunity to rise again and be better than you were before. So hopefully that adds a lot of value to you guys. I want to put out there because we have a lot of people applying of all different levels. And if you're new, find a place like ours that offer mentorship opportunities for you to learn and grow. And if you're a veteran, there's places like ours that are looking for skilled people, but realizing that, hey, you're going to have to be able to bake the cake that we bake, the way we bake it, in order to move your career into the direction you'd like to go. So talk to you guys in a bit and have a phenomenal day. Bye-bye.